Okay, I've tried to record this like 3 times, but I feel like I keep missing something each time. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit disjointed sounding. I'm kind of having trouble like trying to verbalize my thoughts, cuz and stuff. So, I apologize if this is a little bit confusing, but I'm trying to be clear, but then also trying to get across my thoughts without having to over explain. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this video is about pro wrestling. It's been a long time no see from me. I'm sorry. The school year ended and I didn't want to make any YouTube videos, okay? Sorry. And then I went on a holiday, whatever. I've been busy. I've had a lot of stuff on my plate, man. Anyway, this video is about pro wrestling, and specifically I want to talk about characters and character storytelling in pro wrestling. Now, I don't know if a lot of my audience watches wrestling, and I don't even know who's gonna see this all, because it might literally just be people who do watch wrestling. I don't know. Anyway, just in case you're not familiar, I'm gonna be using some, lingo, whatever. Kayfabe is when, kayfabe is basically everything that you see in pro wrestling that's like fake or like fiction, let's say. I prefer that word, fiction. The story and, the storytelling, a lot of the characters, the, personas and shit. The storylines, a lot of the, feuds and, beef, if you will. Beef, I've never said that before when talking about pro wrestling. That was weird. It's basically everything that is fiction. It's the story part of it, typically. And then, I probably won't use this, but just in case. And then, shoot is when it's all, the out of character, real life aspects of it. Or, in certain contexts, a shoot punch or whatever is, when you actually hit someone, in the match, for real, and it's oh shit, or shoot interviews. It's out of character interviews where you're just kind of talking, and sometimes it's like when shooting on other wrestlers, it's you're saying the real shit, you're kind of saying real shit, out of character, out of kayfabe and shit. I don't know. I hope this all makes sense. I'm just trying to get this out of the way, right? So I don't have to talk about it. Oh god, 3 minutes in and I've been yammering on about not even what I've been trying to say. Anyway, alright. So I have a little list so I don't get too off track, but it's quite vague. Yeah, so I want to talk about kayfabe in reality. To start off my thoughts, I guess. Don't expect this to be super great in terms of structured whatever. It was just really on my mind and I want to get it out. Blah. Right. So, yeah, I was watching some Atticus Cogar promos and I was thinking about he blurs that line between kayfabe and reality a lot, in my opinion, in a way that I don't necessarily always see in wrestling nowadays, not at least not as much as in the past. And I think a lot of that has to do with internet wrestling community and the fact that there kind of has been a veil that's been pulled back, which in my opinion, which you could argue that's for good or for bad, but in my opinion I think that it's cool. I think that it's cooler having, as a fan of something, I like having more information about what I'm engaging in, and I like the behind the scenes process. I like knowing how, for example, how matches are, set up, or the Samoa Joe CM Punk shoot interview from Ring of Honor after they had their trilogy of matches. They did a ROH shoot interview where they were talking about how they put those matches together and things that happened in the match or whatever, stuff that was planned, stuff that wasn't, that kind of thing. It's interesting and fun to me. And I like that aspect of it. Speedball Mike Bailey said it best. This isn't going to be an exact quote, but the more that, that's kind of, the more accessible it is in terms of, being able to engage with it is what makes it art, It keeps it art if you're able to engage with it, and if you're able to get that, very real connection to it, which can happen a lot when you know more about whatever. I don't even know. Whatever, alright? I don't know. I went off the rails a little bit there, I'm sorry. Anyway. Yeah, so Atticus Kogar, who is an indie wrestler from, like, GCW nowadays, he was a deathmatch wrestler for a while. Whatever. ICW no holds barred type shit, right? But in his promos, he will blur the lines between kayfabe and reality in a way that I don't always see, I feel like, in my opinion, like, it's very believable. I mean, his promo is very good, in my opinion. Especially, I don't want to say especially, because I feel like that's demeaning to the other independent wrestlers in the indie scene in general, but from my point of view, I feel like promos aren't always taken as seriously, or not. It's not as necessary in the indie circuit always, compared to, like, if you're on TV, and you're using promos to help tell the story in a more clear way, because it's like, oh, you're tuning into every episode of that show, like AEW or WWE, I guess. But don't really expect me to talk about WWE too much, or at least not current, because I don't watch that anymore. I just can't do it. Anyway, storytelling through, because then with indie shows, I feel like it's sometimes harder as a promotion to have a very established, like, oh, these are our storylines that are happening. And I think it's a little more complicated than that, though, because we have social media, Like GCW, for example, they'll post kind of like highlight reels, or like, video packages, if you will. Especially because they do have people who do promos. And I think, but it's not as much of like an important, like, vital thing as, like, you see in WWE, for example. And what WWE LFG, that, like, developmental behind the scenes, like, we're all training and whatever, and we're gonna talk to you about how to do promos and stuff, and whatever. But it's a reality show, right? Legit. But I feel like, I don't know, you don't always see that kind of blurring of reality and kayfabe as much. And I don't know, you could argue that it's better when you have a clear line, or like when things are really, discussed beforehand or whatever. I don't know. I don't really know okay. You could argue that, like, it's better if it's evident, like, what's real, or like shoot, and what is kayfabe, especially if you just prefer, but then I guess it doesn't matter if you're one of those people who was like, yeah, well, kayfabe is kayfabe. I don't really care about, I don't care about the shoot side of things, which is cool, and that's kind of the point. But if you don't care much about the behind the scenes, it's more so what I'm saying. I'm kind of just, so I'm sorry. There's like a fly in my room. Holy shit. Okay. But wrestlers who blur the line between kayfabe and reality in their promos always really strike me. Partially because you can't tell the difference always between, like, oh, that was real, or like, oh yeah, this was all like for example, no, I'm not, I was gonna use an example, but I've forgotten the exact, it's like people who are for example, Sami Zayn and Kevin Steen, or Kevin Owens, right? They go back, like, way back, right? And they're, like, really good friends in real life outside of kayfabe. But they straight up, I think currently at least, KO's this great big heel, Sammy's this big baby face, per always, right? So, and they always have this kind of struggle where when they're on the same set, like, no matter whether or not they are against each other, they're always going to be connected, which that's, I'm kind of getting off track, but like, for example, like they can be bitter enemies in kayfabe and like be best friends in real life, you know? It's like, but I don't know, it's like, I feel the same way about like CM Punk, and like a lot of his promos and stuff is really interesting, and he's another great promo in pro wrestling, is the fact that like you can't always tell if it's, you know, shoot, if you will, or or if it's just kayfabe, right? A shoot or a work, whatever. And that kind of can be tricky sometimes, especially like behind the scenes or whatever, because it's like, oh, well, like, why the fuck would you say that sort of thing? Or like, whatever, like going too far, if you will. Or like disrespectful, you know, because of, I don't know, there's a lot of ego in pro wrestling, you know. We all know how it is. But I don't know, I just think it's really interesting, especially when you're developing your character. Aspects that are clearly very outlandish, and like, let's go back to Atticus Cogar, for example. You have these aspects of his character that are very, very outlandish, and, you know, like, I think there was this bit in one of his, like, video packages that was like, yeah, he's the only person that I know who's lived, who escaped death row type shit, right? And it's, like, really out there. And it's, like, very, you know, like, Undertaker and Kane kind of thing, like, which I think they were an influence on him, from what I recall, which makes sense. But then you have other aspects where it's like very real feeling, or like you can kind of just tell based on either context or whatever, or if you do watch, you know, out of character interviews or whatever, or ones that where it's not as like strictly like, this is the character I'm playing and this is my, you know, I'm cutting promo on you, like my fucking belt, whatever, you know, kayfabe shit. But I don't know, building a character is really interesting to me. And when you're able to do that, I mean, they say that like the best characters in wrestling that you can portray are yourself, just pushed to the 100th degree, you know, because it's the rawest, it's the rawest, it's the closest to you. You just exaggerate it exceptionally, you know. You take parts of yourself, you know, and you push them to the extreme, and you can manipulate that depending on what kind of character you want to play. If you're a heel, an antagonist, or left face, you know, protagonist. And it doesn't really, I don't know, it's really interesting to me. And you can see that kind of in his promos, because like I said, you have the outlandish parts, but then you also have very real seeming things where it's like talking about, and CM Punk also has a similar thing with, like, for example, back in Ring of Honor, his feud with Raven, right? You had that layer to it, that one promo that he cut after that match, I don't remember which one it was, where he's talking about his father, talking about Raven and comparing the two, and like, Raven, you're just like my father, like you know, and talking about all of this shit that was very real feeling, and you kind of blurred that line where you were like, oh fuck, is that, like, is this real? Like, it feels real, there's something different, like, you can at least for me, you can kind of feel when it's different. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. And coming off of that, I guess, with the characters that you portray. Yeah, this is what I want to talk about. I love when, in pro wrestling, your past selves, not necessarily haunt you, but you carry them with you throughout your stories, throughout your storylines, over the years, right? Like, because not everyone just stays and just to clarify, I'm not talking about like wrestlers who play different characters, like, for example, Mick Foley, you know, there's Cactus Jack, Dude Love and Mankind, who are three distinct different characters, like different characters. He plays all of them. Mick Foley plays all of them, but they are all three distinctively different characters. They're different people, right? At least from what I can tell. I mean, that's what I'm kind of, that's what I read it as, considering, you know, that one, I guess, segment where it was like all three of them, or that it was the two of them, and then Mankind was also there, and it was like, or whatever. Maybe it was Cactus Jack. I don't know. My memory's foggy. Forgive me, right? But having, you know, when it's one character and like yourself, you're the same character, you know, but you've been so many different people in the past. It's very real, honestly. Even though, you know, they're characters, it's a very clear and like raw reflection, in my opinion, of real life and humans. And that's like, there's such a human aspect to pro wrestling that always gets me, even in the stories and outlandish shit, you know, shenanigans. And having mirrors of your past selves, and like, you can sometimes see this, like, Seth Rollins, you can do character analysis of him, right, for example, and it's like all the different people that he's been throughout different eras, you know. It's like, I don't really know him as well, so I can't really give you a good, you know, but he's been clearly, like, clear, definitive, different types of people, you know. You feel like the Shield era, and then, you know, post-Shield, like with the Authority, and then, you know, going on and on. That's the era I'm familiar with. That's from my childhood, so I apologize for not being super knowledgeable, but you can see glimmers of that in those characters, those past selves, if you will, throughout. And even now, I'm going to talk about CM Punk, because this is where I'm better at being able to talk about it. Because I know him very well. As a character, right? You can see, like, shades of his past selves throughout, you know, just in general. Like, this is a good example. So, like, Straight Edge Society, right? It was this kind of, like, cultish, like, martyr thing he had going on. It was very, like, Jesus. Like, he literally, like, looked like Jesus. That was, like, the I am gay Jesus, you know, that tweet or whatever. I'm not putting it on screen. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not editing this video. But, you know, it's like, in that kind of complex that he had, which I'm kind of being vague, but not really being able to get, you know, it's kind of that, I don't want to use the wrong word. I don't want to say Messiah complex, but I guess maybe that. But Messiah complex is the same thing as Savior complex, I believe. I don't really know. So it's not really the same. But then you saw, like, glimmers of that character. And, like, that past self, if you will, in just last year in his match against Drew McIntyre, that Hell in a Cell match, where he was like, you pray to your God, you know, talking about himself. You know, so you have this, like, this level of how you view yourself. I guess I wouldn't say God complex, because I don't think it's that, you know, maybe, I guess, whatever. And you saw, yeah, let's say that, kind of God complex thinking, or at least, you know, affinity to something divine, right? Because you had, in Straight Edge Society, like, this very, like, oh yeah, I'm like Jesus type shit, right? Or, like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not doing a great job explaining this, but I hope it's coming across right. You know, which, similarly, in a similar way, you can see how the past can haunt you as a character, you know. Your past can haunt you, and this can also be through influences, which I really love to see. Like, I love knowing who people's influences were. Like, who their favorite wrestlers growing up were, and that's kind of like the shoot part of it that I have fun with, because I like being able to see that in how you, not only how you wrestle, but also like how you do your promos or like physicality. And here's where I talk about MJF. Okay. Because I was watching Dynamite or whatever, I don't know, recently, and I was like, fuck, he was like cutting a promo or something, and I was like, wow. Still to this day, he carries, you can still see that in the influence that CM Punk had on him, both like as a fan, but then also that, you know, I'm talking the characters and stuff, like kayfabe, from a kayfabe perspective, you know, you can see the effect that like his like feud with Punk had, you know, and it's like you see it in his promos. He gets all up in the camera, like close to the camera, like how Punk used to do in Ring of Honor, you know. You see the way he paces his sentences, you know, the way he delivers it, the, you know, syntax, even just the delivery, that's the word I'm looking for, like the delivery, as well as like the tone. It's all very reminiscent of Punk, but it's also his own thing. I'm not saying that they're the same or anything, you know. But, and then that's where their feud was so crazy, because then they directly mirrored Punk's feud with Raven from 2003, I think, from Ring of Honor, right? And you had that kind of like mentor kind of thing, except with that it was a bit different, but like they literally used direct quotes from from those Ring of Honor promos in the promos that they did in AEW, you know, like they directly call back to that feud, and like, I don't know, you know, like direct lines of dialogue that are like, that was from that this promo or whatever. And even in ring, like that last dog collar match that they had, that was directly mirroring Punk and Raven's dog collar match. I don't know, I just think it's really interesting. And when you can see people's influences, as well as carrying, it's like no matter what he does, no matter what MJF does, that'll always be with him, you know? It's like no matter what, and this is, again, the human part of it. It's like no matter what we do, our past is a part of us. It's unchangeably a part of us, you know? And you can see this with, you know, the Shield storylines or whatever, and WWE even now, you know, it's like no one will forgive Seth for what he did. That will haunt him forever. No one will forgive him for betraying the Shield, for betraying his friends in general, but like the Shield was really like the first spark, and it was so, you know, cataclysmic, if you will, that it just, no matter how many times he apologizes, no matter what he does, it haunts him. It sticks with him. He can't escape that. You can't go back and change that. No matter how many apologies you do, no matter, you know, you can't change what you've done. That haunts you forever. And it changed Roman Reigns. Like, it changed his character and like why he became like that, whatever. I don't know enough about him though to like properly be able to give you like kind of any more than that, because I never cared about him as a kid, and I don't care about him now. So sorry, but, and you saw that in Mox as well. It's like they were also like this, or like Mox and Seth are really interesting. Or I guess Dean Ambrose, I should be saying. Because like they were an FCW, right? Before, and they had that kind of, you know, chemistry and storyline there, and then that kind of carried over, and then it's like, oh shit, they're in the Shield together, right? It's just kind of just like this bond. And like from what I recall, like after after Seth like betrayed the Shield, like they split away from each other, and like Mox was alone again, right? Because he kind of always had that thing where it was like, yeah, there was like literally a promo where he's like, yeah, I don't have many friends, like whatever, I don't really, you know, they literally marketed him as the lunatic fringe, like, oh shit, he's so crazy, dude, he's so crazy and out of his mind, which I really don't know why, because it's not like he was doing any of the hardcore shit that he did in like CZW and WWE, you know what I'm saying, like, but you know what I'm saying, it's just really funny to me. But you know, it's like he was alone again. It's very interesting, and I don't know, our past haunts us, it sticks with us, and the mirrors of our past selves stick with us in what we do, you know? You can't change that. Like, I mean, I guess you can try, but it'll always be there, you know? Everything will always still be there. And that's what is so, it's not even always an intentional part of the way you, I guess, perform or write your character in wrestling. It's just like, it's because it's such a human thing that I feel like it's not even intentional sometimes, especially when your character kind of did start, or at least is to some degree, a version of yourself. You know? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Pretty cool. I love wrestling. And I don't know if this was that interesting or made sense to anyone, but... And I kind of got off the rails a little bit, but... Yeah, whatever. I might talk about specific feuds that I really enjoy at some points, but I don't really know. I never made that, match about Chris Brooks and Kid Lycos. Sorry, I never made that video about their match, is what I was trying to say. So maybe I will at some point. I think I recorded it, but I didn't edit it. I didn't want to edit it, or like my computer was being weird. I don't remember, okay? So, yeah, alright. I think that's it. I think that's all I want to talk about. Yeah, our past haunts us, both in real life and in kayfabe, and that's kind of, it blurs together. Those lines blur, and there's nothing you can do to change it. It's like, yeah, very human. This is a very human sport. It's the best sport on earth. Top 3 things of all time: pro wrestling, post-hardcore, and Diet Coke. 3 best inventions that man ever made. Okay. Subscribe, I guess, if you want. Like the video, comment. Let's talk about wrestling, whatever. If you want to talk to me about wrestling, you can message me on Tumblr, I guess. My Tumblr's down below, and my Instagram's both my art and my regular one. Yeah, alright. I don't know. Bye. I'll see you some other time.